A constitutional convention. I forgot about the constitutional convention. I'm sorry. We can do some things in the constitutional convention that they're not going to do for us. First thing we can do is eliminate the income tax.
Yeah.
I believe the income tax is unconstitutional. I believe that the state of New York doesn't even have an income tax. It's piggybacking on a federal tax liability. I believe the federal income tax is applied unconstitutionally in the United States today. It is making criminals out of American people who were born free. The second thing, elimination of the property tax. As soon as they took possession or assumed the ability to tax your property, you no longer owned it. They have taken ownership of your property. And I'm going to work to eliminate the property tax. There are people running for office who are talking about reducing your property tax. I mean, at what point do you stop being a slave? When somebody else can stop taking your money. Listen, make them stop taking your property. It is absolutely reprehensible that in New York State, the elderly in particular are taxed right out of their homes. I read an article just recently, and they were applauding the legislature in Maine because this one particular town is allowing people to work for free to pay off their property taxes. In my book, that's slavery. We tax so much of your money that now we need your labor at no cost. And they're congratulating themselves for it. Term limits.
Yeah.
And I say the best term limit is last. This is their last term in office. In 2010, you will have the power to remove all 62 New York State senators. Yeah. You will have the power to remove all 154 New York State Assembly people. You have a governor that's up for election. You're going to have the power. If only 39% show up, let's get the other 61 to support someone else. We can take our government back. And don't let the media or anybody else tell you otherwise. They're lying to you. Recall. If my elected official is not doing what we elected him to do, we should be able to fire him in the middle of his term.
Yeah.
If I hire somebody at the place that I work and that person isn't doing the job I want them to do, I fire them. And that's the power that you have as well. You can fire your legislator, but that is not in our Constitution, and it needs to be there. We need to be able to recall our legislators. Next. Initiative and referendum. We want certain things to be on the ballot, but we don't have a constitutional right to put it on the ballot. We should get that in our next Constitution. Initiative and referendum. If we want government spending to be capped at a certain dollar limit, we circulate the petitions, it goes on the ballot, if it passes, it's law. We establish law, not some pin-headed bureaucrat, not some corrupt political leader. We establish what the law is. It's our consent that they're supposed to be represented. Anything else, good or bad? This is the caveat. If we open up a constitutional convention, we are starting out with a blank piece of paper. Anything can happen when you have a constitutional convention. But it is certain that nothing good is going to happen without one. You're never going to have the elimination of the income tax, the property tax, term limits. Can you imagine Dale Volcker supporting term limits? Not on your life. Recall. Can you imagine any of our local delegation supporting recall? They'd all be recalled. Especially the ones that didn't show up for work for 32 days, except once to vote themselves a pay raise.
Yeah.
Non-representatives at the state level, new representatives at the state level, that can happen. You know what? Is it possible for me to turn this podium? Because I don't like it at all. I like being able to see what I'm doing. All right, that's a little bit better. Anybody back there mind that my back is turned to them? Good. It's not because I don't like it, it's just that I don't like it. All right, new representatives at the state level. You're never going to get any of these things unless you replace these legislators. Unless you replace the Dale Volkers and the George Maziars and the Stokowskis and the Robin Schimingers and all of these guys that have been up there for a lifetime have never done anything for Western New York, have never done anything for the state of New York, except raise the cost of living here so high that our children are leaving. They had this great idea. Let's tax the wealthy. You know what the wealthy did? They left. And because they taxed the wealthy in their computations and they spent all the money they projected on getting from them, they had to pass that loss on to you. Next. Excerpts from current New York State Constitution, Article 19, Section 2. At the general election to be held in the year 1957 and every 20th year thereafter, and also at such times as the legislature may by law provide, this is a key by the way, at such times as the legislature may provide, the question, shall there be a convention to revise the Constitution and amend the same, shall be submitted and decided by the electors of the state. Every 20 years, this referendum is on the ballot. It's going to come up in 2017. That's going to be on the ballot. And we're going to have a chance in 2017 to vote whether or not to have a constitutional convention. How many people want to wait till 2017 to get rid of the parasites? No. I want it, but I want it now. I don't want to wait until 2017, but I'm willing if that's the only option we have. What do we need to do for a valid referendum? First, we need voters in every county, town, city, every election district. Everybody has to be there. We need help to advertise the referendum. The signs are a first start, abolishing New York State. We need more signs out for anybody that wants one. They're available for a contribution if you'd like to have one. If you'd like to have 500, we'd like to take your money just as well. All right? We need people to man all the voting booths. This referendum is going to look just like a vote that you would take in September or November, run by the Board of Elections, but it's going to be run without their consent or their participation. It's absolutely binding on the state government if this referendum actually takes place. We need people to canvass the polls. That means at the end of the time allocated to vote, the people who are going to be monitoring the polls are going to take the cards that are going to be used as ballots, we're going to paper ballots, and they'll canvass the polls. They'll actually count the number of votes that came in, and they'll determine how many said yes and how many said no, and they'll report those to a central location. That is a binding election. 4.7 million people need to participate in this election. We need people to register to vote. If you're not registered to vote, shame on you. Do you know that in this New York State, this is just a little side note, in New York State, people are registering to vote without registering to a party. And for the first time in the history of New York, there are more people registered to vote that are not a part of any party than there are registered to either of the two, or actually the combined total of both of the two major political parties. There are more of us than there are of them. And we can take our government back if we want. We need funding. The cost of the ballots alone is $70,000. We need somebody with deep pockets to help us out. We need people with 5s and 10s to help us out statewide. And this is the thing. I'm not going to shame you into giving on purpose. But you know what? If your freedom's not worth $5 for a sign, move to Russia. Move to Russia. If your freedom isn't worth taking an afternoon off, then you belong in China. But if you value the blood that was shed to give you the freedom to be here today, then help make this a reality. Funding and finance, cost of printing. Printing the voter registration. There are 11.9 million voters in New York. 11.9 million. We have to print registration, we have to print the voter registration for all 11.9 million people so they can vote. We need to advertise on radio and TV. As much as they love us, they're not going to give us airtime free, not indefinitely. In order to do that, we're going to need financial assistance. What happens after?